Our text today comes from Luke chapter 23, verses 32 through 33 and 39 through 43. Two others also, who were criminals, were led away to be put to death with him. When they came to the place that is called the Skull, they crucified Jesus there with the criminals, one on his right and one on his left. One of the criminals who were hanged there kept deriding him and saying, "Are you not the Messiah? Save yourself and us also." But the others rebuked him, saying, "Do you not fear God, since you are under the same sentence of condemnation? And we indeed have been condemned justly, for we are getting what we deserve for our deeds. But this man has done nothing wrong." Then he said, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." He replied, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." Now every year Easter comes around, I remember my great-grandfather, Ivan Hamilton. He passed away during Holy Week about 10 years ago, and I was a very lucky person, not only to remember my great-grandfather, to actually know him. I used to go over to his place and we would watch John Wayne movies. He was the first one to introduce me to a little movie called Casablanca, which I guess is a pretty big deal. He also taught me something about priorities when, at the ripe age of 90, he decided that he would stop smoking after over 70 years. His reason? Because he started dating a younger 82-year-old woman who carried around an oxygen tank. He couldn't smoke around her, so he gave it up. At his funeral, I remember the last time I was with him. A few weeks earlier, all of my extended family gathered at a small fishing club in rural Ohio. It was a beautiful spring day. Leaves were just starting to turn green. And I have to admit, I was not much of a fisher. Neither was my grandfather. So the two of us sat next to the pond with our cousins fishing and talked and listened and simply sat. You know, Jesus is strangely silent when the two criminals debate his identity. But then something happens. The good criminal turns to Jesus and says, "Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom." In all the Gospels, he is one of the few who dare to speak to Christ, calling him by his name, Jesus. And he says, "Remember me." And Jesus replied, "Truly I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise." There is something in all of us that calls out, "Remember me." But it's so difficult to remember. A time when we move so quickly, we are also asked during Holy Week to sit down and remember. And this act, remembering, is a slow act. It requires space and time, things that are hard often to cultivate. In our gospel story, we are called to a hill where 3 people once died. Many scholars believe that this, in real time, would not have attracted much attention. There were a lot of crucifixions under Pontius Pilate. But for us, it might even be something like a car accident that we see on the highway. We slow down and think how terrible it is, but then quickly move on to where we need to be later that day. But the criminal says, "Remember me." A dying man's request to another dying man. And Jesus gives a promise. There is a home for him in paradise. There is this poem by the Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish called "I Am There," and I'd like to read it for you. I come from there and remember. I was born like everyone is born. I have a mother and a house with many windows. I have brothers, friends, and a prison. I have a wave that seagulls snatch away. I have a view of my own and an extra blade of grass. I have a moon past the peaks of words. I have the God-sent food of birds and an olive tree beyond the Kent of time. I have traversed the land before swords turned bodies into banquets. And I come from there. I return the sky to its mother when for its mother the sky cries, and I weep for a returning cloud to know me. I have learned the words of blood-stained courts in order to break the rules. I have learned and dismantled all the words to construct a single one. Home. In the stillness of a cross, a dying man says, "Remember me." And in remembering the cross, we give it a home in our own hearts. When our own time comes, we turn to God, we will likely ask for one simple thing. Remember me. And we know that we are blessed because our God will remember us. And in God's remembering, we too will find a home.